Welcome back. In case you were wondering, my blonde BL05 has not arrived, so it is still on paper for now. Moving on to more important things. So today we're here to talk about the KBEAR KB04. So when I first saw this guy, I actually thought it was just a mini version of the KBEAR Diamond, which is this guy. Because it actually has a very similar shape. But then when you look closely, you'll see that the KB04 is actually one dynamic driver, one BA, and this was a coated dynamic driver. And it was about $90, and this is about $27. So not really a mini, but they do share some similarities, and some similarities with the BL05 as well. So we'll get to that in a minute. So spec-wise, as I said, one DD, one BA. It is a zinc metal shell, which is actually super nice. It comes with one of the standard KBEAR cables, which I don't have in front of me, but it's kind of a plastically black, kind of a stiff cable. It wasn't my favorite, but it actually works pretty well. This is the box, pretty basic, nothing too fancy for $27. So the more kind of important question is who should buy this guy? You know, $27 is basically a great entry-level IEM if you're looking for to buy something for the first time. Where I think it actually fits better is if you already have sort of a bass-heavy IEM, kind of like the Blonde, maybe the Urban Fun, something that is kind of more centered on the sub-bass bass range, and you're looking for something that's more treble focused. That's kind of exactly where the KB04 comes in. So I think it'll be a nice complement to things that people have. And if you're, trying to buy an entry level IEM and you want to try a tuning that's kind of more treble centric, this might actually meet your needs as well. So that's something to keep in mind as we get into it. So this one was actually sent to me from an Amazon store, Better Audio US, and as I said, it's about $27, and I think it's a couple dollars cheaper on AliExpress, but $27 is actually pretty reasonable, considering you'll get it next day or 2 days, however you ship your Amazon products. So let's kind of get into the sound, and I'll start with this song, Shallow. I don't know if that's Shalou or Shallow. That's the artist. I don't know how he pronounces his name. Singer is Dea. And the song is older. And I sort of picked that song, not because it's a super test track, but because it actually does a really good job of showing the good and the bad parts of this particular KB04 IEM. So in the first couple seconds, you'll hear Dea's voice, and it'll be kind of super clear. The clarity on this thing really kind of stands out. For $27, it's really different than other $20 IEMs that you're going to pick. And those tend to be, the TRNs and the KZs. They tend to be a little more bass heavy. As I said, this guy is kind of more bass light treble focus, and that really comes through in her voice. It's kind of startling at first how clear it is, and you kind of get that trade-off of if you turn the bass down, the clarity tends to increase, and that's exactly what happens on this guy. And it's actually what happened on the Diamond as well. But the first couple seconds of that song, that's basically what's going to hit you. And as I said, the bass is, especially the sub bass, is actually kind of a lower level, so the note weight itself is kind of light. And it kind of floats. It's different. It's not like a normal $20 IEM. So something to keep in mind, especially if you're looking for something more bass heavy. This is definitely not. And they definitely turn the bass down to allow everything to breathe and be clear. And that comes through in the first couple seconds. And then in probably the first 20 seconds, you'll hear the piano kick in. And you'll hear that kind of that light note weight. It sounds great. But don't expect, kind of a hard, punchy piano. It's kind of a light, floating, clear. It's not really nice. And then a couple seconds after that, you'll hear the bass punch kick in, and it'll sound kind of fast and tight, kind of just like the Diamond did. So not the same driver, but it's definitely kind of a faster, tighter driver than what you're typically used to. And I think that kind of helps on the sub bass side. It kind of disappears. The decay is really kind of faster than it should for a bass heavy IEM. But on this, in this tuning, it kind of works. And you think about kind of a faster, punchier sound as opposed to kind of a slower rumbler sound. It's definitely tighter and faster. And then about 50 seconds into that song, 55 or so, everything, there's this big kind of wall of sound kicks in. Her voice gets louder, and the higher frequencies kick in. And that's sort of where you'll hear most everyone's complaint about the KB04 kick in. And it's the treble can overextend a little bit, almost like you're on an EQ and you're turning the slider up a little bit and you kind of go past that point and you're like, oh, that doesn't sound as great as it should. Let me knock it down a bit. And that's sort of where at 55 seconds, you'll kind of hear it on this. It sounds a bit shouty. It sounds like the IEM is kind of struggling a bit to, make that sound right. And that's kind of the biggest complaint was the treble timbre kind of goes off a little bit there in that particular song at that point. And it happens in other songs, but that just happened to be the one song that kind of captured the whole range of the good and the bad for me. And second part of that was it'll get a bit shouty, and sibilance is kind of where you actually hear a tiny bit. It's pretty spotty, but on that particular song, you definitely hear a little bit. And I think everyone kind of agreed that it's not a huge problem, but definitely appears when the IM kind of struggles a bit on those sections. So the bass, as I said, is kind of a lightweight sub bass. And so this song, The Weekend, Blinding Light, it really needs, if you listen to it in your car, you listen to it on your desktop, it really needs a little rumble to kind of balance out where his voice is. So on that particular song, you'll get all the tight and fast mid-bass punches, but you're going to miss some of that low rumble that really balances out the song. So it'll sound a bit different than what you're normal listening to. And it's not necessarily a huge deal breaker problem, but it's something to be aware of, that if you're looking for a strong rumbler, this is not the strong rumbler. It's definitely a upper mid, treble centric. That's kind of where the focus is. And on a song like that, which you're really looking for balance on both sides, you'll definitely tell it's missing there. So that's why I picked that one. So on the mids, this thing kind of shines on this soundstage, instrumentation, treble sounds on guitars and drums. That's sort of exactly where this thing shines. And the Diamond it was about the same way. So Harry Styles' Golden is kind of this modern rock song-ish. So drums are playing, you'll hear plenty of the mid-bass punch, but then you'll hear a lot of even the snare drums, the guitars. There's a few high-frequency instruments that kind of pop through on that song, and his voice kind of stays up there as well. And as I said, that clarity, the soundstage, this sound bubble that this thing does is actually really nice. And you'll sort of starting to notice it here on this song, where his voice sort of floats above the instruments. You never feel like the mids are clobbering the vocals. And so that was sort of one of the first songs, at least here, that I'll point that out. And it happens a lot. And but in general, that song is sort of this fast, nice energy. All that kind of comes through on the KB04, which I thought was great. And then moving on to something kind of slower, which really showcases the clarity and the details, and how on quiet parts of the song, this thing really shines. And the voice, as I said, his vocals are sort of floating above on the soundstage. It's a really nice effect, and something I didn't really expect at $26 or $27. So this old song, Gautier, Somebody I Used to Know, you've probably heard it a million times. But in this, you'll notice the vocals. Like I always remember the hook, right? It's got that really super catchy hook. But listen to it on something like this, and his vocals really pop. It's kind of startling hearing his kind of detailed vocals kind of floating right above that catchy hook. I thought it was really good, really good use of sound space on this one. And so I don't think the soundstage is super wide. It's definitely wide, but it seems that it makes a really good use of the space that's there. Like, nothing ever feels crowded. The vocals definitely never get crowded. And especially on these kind of slower songs, it really pops. Really, really good. So on the upper mids, so as I said, so in the older song, you'll see the treble upper mids can get a bit shouty, a bit thin, and so right in the beginning of Harry Styles' Golden Song, the cymbals will sound a bit thin, kind of that whoosh sound where it doesn't really sound like an instrument. It's kind of a sound like a really thin instrument, maybe a little bit steely. It doesn't sound as rich in its texture as it should be, and it's sort of, I think cymbals are probably the one area where this doesn't sound as well as it should. So you don't really know. I mean, there's only so many songs that have cymbals in it, but everyone points it out, and that's sort of pretty much where this one, everyone points out the same problem. But on the better side is there's a song called Peter Alexander's No Better Time. And again, you get this kind of a slower, more sparse music, and the clarity just pops on this more so than what you're used to. And so this song takes a really nice trip from piano to soaring strings, and you really get a sense of how the KB04 can do really high frequency instruments without going into the shouty range. And that song kind of showcases, you know, as much as I wanted to push it, it sounds really good, and it soars and it ascends, and it sort of did everything it should do, but didn't, you know, go around the bend and go sideways, and you know, you have to reach for the volume because it's too much. That song for me sort of hit kind of the sweet spot of the KB04, and it's a cool song, so you should check that out if you haven't. So that's about it. It's kind of a quick stroll through the KB04. I thought it was going to be kind of a mini diamond, but on its own, it's sort of tuned. It's kind of tuned a similar way. They were kind of going for a more treble-centric instead of a bass-centric sound. So I think their goal was similar, but hardware-wise and price-wise, they're really two different IEMs. But so again, this one came from the Better Audio store on Amazon. If you want to do some more research on it, check it out there. Read other reviews, and thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.